Welcome to Electorama Weekly. This week we're discussing Taylor Eigen Fisher's analysis of the top three proposal from Better Choices for Democracy. The method combines an all-candidate top three primary with a general election made up of three head-to-head matchups. Taylor Eigen Fisher recently published an essay titled Better Choices Has a Neat Idea. It explains what Taylor finds promising about this proposal and why Taylor is not entirely ready to endorse this proposal as designed. I'm Rob Lanphier, founder of the Election Methods mailing list, co-founder of ElectoramaWeekly, and a board member of Equal Vote Coalition, though I'm speaking for myself today. I'm joined by Carlo Estefano as co-host and Taylor Eigen Fisher as guests.
Hello, I'm Carlo Estefano. I am a student at San Jose State University. I love all voting methods, approval voting, star voting, Condorcet. I am volunteer at Equal Vote, and that's me.
All right, and we have Taylor Eigen Fisher, who normally joins us as co-host. Today, Taylor is our guest. Taylor is a mathematician, an advocate for approval voting, and a volunteer with Equal Vote Coalition sometimes, I think. Taylor, welcome as guest. Welcome to the guest chair. Tell us a few things about yourself.
Hello, I'm Taylor Eigen Fisher, a mathematician, an approval voting advocate. I've been writing on my blog for 6 years now or something. So you can find that at eigentaylor.github.io. And I just published something about the Better Choices system, as Rob Law explained.
Before we get started in asking you all sorts of questions about your blog post, could you tell us your understanding about how Better Choices for Democracy's top three proposal works?
Okay, so it's a nonpartisan sort of blanket primary. You have all the candidates on one ballot for an initial round. So rather than having like closed partisan primaries, the top vote getters advance to a runoff with three candidates. And in that runoff, voters will see three matchups between the three candidates, like A versus B, B versus C, A versus C, and they vote in each matchup individually. The candidate who wins all their matchups wins. And if all of them lose one, the one who lost by the smallest amount wins.
All right.
Least bad loss.
And I just pulled up the Better Choices for Democracy website that gives us some visuals of this, but we'll include the link to this explanation in the show notes. Carlo, you have any things you want to ask about here?
So Taylor, you kind of, just knowing you for the last couple months to a year, you've had a little bit of a evolution when it comes to how you view primaries. I know that initially you were more excited for kind of a partisan primary system. And I see now, and you mentioned in your blog post how you've been warming up to nonpartisan systems. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, so I used to be sort of more towards partisan primaries. I thought that parties should generally decide their candidates, but I've kind of come around to like the California system where I live. In theory, I like that all the candidates are sort of held accountable to all voters. So in California, rather than a closed Democratic primary deciding who the governor is now, theoretically, Republicans have a voice in who is elected. That's not how it works in practice because you can only choose one. But in theory, I think an approval jungle primary is a really good system. I used to be worried about the lockout problem, but I've come around. People have sort of convinced me that you don't necessarily need every single party on the ballot. And having a meaningful choice is generally more important.
Let me ask a follow-up to that. Like, okay, so if you have an approval top three, you could, in a place like California, end up with three Democrats on the ballot very easily, because the Democratic Party has the money. They can coordinate enough to make sure that they have, they basically give you three viable, different-ish choices. And that are better than whatever the Republican is running. I mean, do you see the big parties here trying to do that?
I think that's possible. So that's one of the things I'm currently sort of investigating in some of my models is how, possible are lockouts. And I've gotten some conflicting results. I think it's possible. Some simulations say it's possible that a Republican could still make it into a top 3 approval, depending on the model of voter behavior. But I would say that in California, having 3 relatively distinct Democrats might be the ultimately sort of the best choice in giving voters like a real options between, having 3 sort of distinct candidates. Because, in California, a Republican is kind of a sacrificial lamb. The goal, like ultimately, it would be nice if you didn't have to choose between a competitive primary and a diverse, or a competitive runoff and a diverse runoff. Ideally, we would have both, but if I had to choose between them, I would say a competitive, meaningful choice is preferable. Yeah.
I have yet another follow-up, but yeah, Carlo, you break in next time.
Mhm.
I will okay, so with 2 candidates, I've come around as well. Like 2 candidates, it's better for 2 Democrats, almost certainly, because we've only got, there's only 2. Okay, let's actually, find the viable candidate and have a discussion. With 3 candidates, it feels like there should be at least one Republican in there. Just, because 40%-ish of California identifies themselves as Republicans.
I think that's absolutely correct. And that's one of the reasons I'm somewhat actually optimistic that a state like California could manage to get a Republican into the top 3 if, Republicans unite behind like a single choice, and especially if that single choice can be appealing to Democrats, someone who could actually earn some cross approvals from sort of moderate centrist Democrats. I think that could definitely be a path forward. It's one of the things approval does, is it sort of brings candidates towards the median. So one of the things I kind of look at is like James Tallarico in Texas. If there was a sort of Republican version of that in California, I don't know, maybe. But 40% is a lot. And I think the idea that every single Democrat is going to vote for every single Democrat if they're allowed to, I just don't know if that's really plausible. I think Democrats can potentially be kind of discerning, sort of purity testing on who they would actually be willing to approve, rather than just, I'm going to approve literally everyone. But it's too early to say, I think.
So, uniquely, the better choice system does have a top 3 and not a top 2. Probably like any conversation of a runoff or a second election in general is almost always thinking about a top 2, other than Alaska is probably the main one that I'm thinking about, at least. The top 3 brand, or I guess the top 3 idea, what are the trade-offs that you see there? Does part of it attract you? Does part of it kind of push you away, or is it a mix of both?
That's a great question. So one of the things that kind of pushed me into liking a runoff was I was working on a model of like epistemic noise on VSE, and kind of, maybe it's a little cheating, but if you suppose that there's less epistemic noise and voters actually know what they want in the runoff when they may not be as informed in the primary, then a top 2 runoff gives voters a really easy choice and a good sort of a chance to really know which candidate they prefer, and time to change their beliefs if they maybe weren't so informed in the first step. So that's something I really like about a top 2, is extremely simple. There's no ambiguity in how you should vote. So with the top 3, there's more choices, but that makes it more complicated. And if you just pick any single method like ranked choice voting, that could be really bad. So the fact that it's this specific Condorcet system has me more optimistic than maybe through something like top 3 star or top 3 rank choice, especially.
Okay, so like the specific formidability of this combination is what kind of gets you there.
Yes. So like especially like ballot design, really, I really like that.
About ballot design, Roblo, would you do you want to kind of go into this, or
Yeah,
do you
well,
want me to ask a
what we
question?
can do is so we get like what I'm thinking is tell us about some of the visuals in your blog post. Like, how do these work?
Yeah. So I'm
Like
not a
this
coder.
weird thing. It's like I what am I looking at here?
Okay, so yeah. So the sliders tell you the margins of each matchup, and then it calculates, who would win under the system. So right now, in this case, Alice wins both of her matchups. She is a Condorcet winner. She wins all her matchups, so she's elected, regardless of what happens between Bob and Clark. So if you move around the sliders, you can see sort of what happens. So
Okay,
for
so,
the,
so this Alice thing will change. Oh, I see. Gotcha. Well, I sort of see.
yeah, so now if you flip that, then suddenly Bob wins both of his matchups and he's elected.
Okay, right. Oh, I see. So you're allowing. Okay, so just letting the adjustments happen.
Yeah, and then now you're in a cycle, and then if Bob loses his matchup to
When was I in
Clark,
the cycle? Oh, I see. There. Okay.
and now the smallest loss is Bob, so then he's elected. Everyone loses one matchup, so we pick the one with the least bad loss, and so Bob loses by 10 points compared to Alice loses by 14 points. So only a 10-point loss. Bob is elected.
So I guess I want to sort of, now that I'm seeing it again, I wanted to sort of ask you were teasing a little a bit towards it, but one of the biggest parts of your post is talking about the format specifically, because the head-to-head mini-max portion, the runoff or the general election in this system is not ranked. It's a literal head-to-head. You're seeing every single combination, and in this case, it's just three. What would the proper term be? I guess just like pairwise comparisons. Yeah, matchups. 3 matchups. And that's very consistent. You see it in the ballot format, and you also see it in the results. Talk to me about. I think one part you said is that, and I thought it was really interesting. It's that voters intuitively can feel what a vote is if it's a bubble. Like if it's just a simple bubble in a scenario where like just that's my full vote. That is my vote, right? That's the thing for choose one voting. That's the thing for approval voting. And I'd assume you'd argue that's also kind of a thing in this system too. Could you expand on what that is for you, what that means for you?
Yeah, so people kind of understand that a bubble is a vote. That's how everyone votes across the country, unless you're doing like ranked choice voting or something. So instead of using a ranking, which I think is generally kind of ambiguous, I think most people think they know how a ranked voting system works, but you kind of ask them how, and then they kind of show they don't, even if they vote in ranked choice voting elections. So bringing Condorcet to the actual head-to-head matchups, I think, is a good choice, because that tells you it's more informative for how the system is actually going to use your vote. So one of the things I've heard from some people is, if you vote A, B, C, people kind of inherently assume A gets like extra points over your last choice. But in Condorcet, that's not how it works. So it's just one vote for first over second, one vote for second over third, and one vote for first over last.
Right. So sorry to butt in. Just wanted to, I guess, like expand on what you're saying right there. I think we've talked about this too before, about how ordinary voters, they'll think, some of them will think that it's just a scoring system reverse. Some people will think that it's like a transferring system like ranked choice voting, and then others will have other discussions. And that's like that can be a contentious idea, that ranks are ambiguous, or scores are, maybe scores are a little less ambiguous just on face value, but ranks specifically. And when Condorcet is using a ranked system, a ranked ballot format, it can be mistaken for several different methods, which I see that as a valid concern. I see that as a valid reason to like the head-to-head system. It is a more natural interpretation of the specific Condorcet mechanic, the pairwise comparison mechanic, because we see, again, like I said before, we see it on the ballot, and then we also see it in the results, and that's what you were mentioning.
Yeah. So one concern though is that, this isn't as simple as like approval or choose one. Like, some people may go in and they say, wait, why is this candidate on the ballot twice? So what do I do? And I showed it to my mother. I showed this exact thing to my mother when I was working on it. She was like, I don't know what's going on here. I mean,
that leads me to my question, which is like, which the reason why at first I was incredibly skeptical about this proposal, even though I've been a Condorcet advocate for decades now. Like I looked at this and was like, oh no, like this is going to be a disaster for voters. Because what you see on the screen here, I'm sharing one of your visuals, is a circular preference, right? It's possible to express a circular preference, which I think that will just cause people's minds to melt. Like, mind you, if somebody does something stupid with their ballot, they get stupid results. Like it's fine. And that's the reason why I've come around to it. It's like, well, okay, people can overvote as well. People can, do whatever. But what are your thoughts on the circular expression on a ballot?
I won't lie that the fact you can vote intransitively was one of the things that made me like, oh, this is pretty interesting. So like,
you looked at it from a math geek perspective, huh?
Yeah. So I mean, one of the things I kind of think about like with Condorcet is that my interpretation of the Condorcet ideal is someone who would win in every runoff, like in every matchup. And I know that's not like what even Condorcet, he always kind of, I believe he some of his writing said, he thinks it should be interpreted from a ranked ballot. But I'm like, voters can have intransitive preferences theoretically. Maybe humans are messy, so a ranked ballot is kind of limiting, and it doesn't really tell you who would win every single runoff. So like, this feels like the Condorcet ideal to me, but I know I get pushback on that.
I love this. There's a specific quote here. Oh, and if you're feeling this is from the blog post. And if you're feeling mischievous, you can vote intransitively. Rock over scissors, scissors over paper, paper over rock. You literally can't do that in a ranked method. I have no idea why you'd want to, but in this system, you are free of the shackles of transitivity. I love that. I love that so much. That is amazing.
Yeah, I tried to zoom in on the part that you were talking about, but yeah, so those were the only two visuals we got in your blog post, right? Was the little slider bars and the ballot itself, right?
Yes.
Which, yeah, I'm so let's see here. So why? Okay, so the bar in the middle is not movable. Okay, so it's only
that's like the 50% mark.
Right. Okay, got it.
I do want to say one thing about the voting intransitively, because one of the things that might be a concern for some people is if you extend the amount of expression on a ballot, does that expand the strategic surface area, like room for strategy? And so I'm currently working on some math on the strategy, and what I've found so far is that at least in the 3-candidate case, there is no profitable manipulation for voting intransitively if you have transitive preferences. So that's one of the things I would like to say.
Okay. Yeah, that's yeah, I mean, so the thing that worries me is the confusion and the like possible misinformation, like the sort of intransitive votes. Like I wonder if somebody like trying to undermine an election would tell people to make a circular vote because it'll be better for your candidate or whatever, which would be crazy pants dumb. And yet, like this, there's been dumber misinformation out there. So yeah, this no, it's taken me a while to warm up to it. Like I like the system, but you know, I suspect there are going to be a lot of people whose brains kind of melts through with all of these questions.
Yeah, so one of the things I like is that in practice, like what it would come down to for most voters is vote for your favorite in both their matchups, and then you also get to vote for your second choice over your third. So in practice, that's what it's going to be like. And hopefully in terms of like voter education, potentially you can really kind of emphasize that there's really not a lot of room to like, there's not a lot of reason to lie. The cases where you're like burying a candidate or betraying your favorite can be profitable, structurally narrow, is what I would say. So hopefully this could be like, has potential to be one of the most honest systems, I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking about it now, and I'm reading through your article, and I was processing some of your philosophy, because like you kind of have a very straightforward philosophy, but at the same time it's one that I don't want to say is deficient in the voting science community, but I would say that you push it to a level that's very pragmatic, despite I think you having a very formidable understanding of the systems, of strategy. I wanted to ask, I see that you like approval. I see that you like this system specifically in its format. I can tell that you have like you have a fascination for systems that have a bit more of like a more obvious tactile demonstration of its mechanics. I want to know where that comes from specifically, because I like it can come off as obvious in the beginning to just be like, oh, well, choose like the simplest thing that's like decently formidable. But you go as far as to say, oh, approval right now is probably the only thing that I support. And now that this is kind of going into your Overton window a little bit, I'd love for you to just like take maybe a minute or so to just like talk about where that comes from, because I'm curious on how that connects to this specifically, and in considerations to political viability, beyond the theoretical. What is this for you?
Yeah, so I would say maybe I'm a bit of an odd one out in the electoral reform space, in that I'm not a huge fan of like voting in practice. I'm not that politically engaged, or at least I especially didn't used to be. So voting was kind of a chore. And so when I see some of these more expressive but complex systems, I'm a little hesitant, because I'm like, well, like, would I actually enjoy voting in a star election? I don't know. Probably not that much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like giving a comptroller I've never heard of 3 or 4 stars does not appeal to me.
Sure. No, yeah, for sure.
So like,
you don't have strong opinions about the coroner?
No. Like I know people who like they know every single candidate in like every single house race across the country, and who they would vote for and how many stars they would give them and what their ranking is. And I'm like, that's not me. So what appeals to me about approval is that same ballot format, I can go in, I can just say, oh, I like this candidate. I like this candidate too. I like that candidate. And so this system too is appealing as a sort of runoff mechanism where you have three candidates, like, well, I can say I like this one, and oh, I can choose between my second and third choice as well. I can have a say in all those matchups. It's not too cognitively demanding, hopefully, but I would like to see some usability studies. I would like to see how it works in practice.
Yeah.
Is there anything, or I guess Rob, I want you to, you're talking about finishing this off of like,
well, okay,
like kind of,
one more question. I'll let you have.
Yeah, no. I was gonna say like about I wanted you to ask about what would kind of push you towards supporting this system as well. I wanted you to, because we were talking about in the kind of wrapping it up there.
Yeah. So the first thing is I really think you need approval in that primary. Like the system, my understanding was it was called consensus choice, but if the consensus choice, if people can't like vote for them in the primary, then how are they even going to get into the consensus choice part of the election? So that's one thing. I don't think just expanding the runoff from 2 candidates to 3 really fixes the issue. The second thing is I would want to at least see some evidence that voters like understand the system and they aren't too intimidated by it. In one of the sources in my article is something from the MIT. It was an analysis of ranked choice voting in Maine, and it doesn't look very good. People tend to have lower confidence in the election results when they use a ranked ballot. So I'm kind of hoping that this system, with its sort of pairwise dominance, this person wins all their matchups, like, oh, that feels so great, it's the majority candidate. Hopefully that feels better for voters, but otherwise I think approval's really good.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, as a fellow California resident, I'm even just during this conversation, I just got to thinking about the last governor's race and the 61 candidates, and it's just like, yeah, okay, we needed approval in that pretty badly. So, yeah. All right. Well, anyway, Taylor, thanks for joining us as a guest this week. So Taylor's article is at eigentaylor.github.io/blog/better choices, with a hyphen in there somewhere. And we'll include that in the Better Choices Top 3 Explainer in the notes. The Electorama monthly newsletters are at electowiki.org/wiki/Electorama news. Corrections and tips can go to news@electorama.com, or you can edit the newsletter directly. It's a wiki. And with that, I'm Rob Lanphier.
I'm Taylor Eigen Fisher. Oh, no.
That's okay. No, that's do it again.
Thank you for having me. I'm Taylor Eigen Fisher.
I'm Carlo Estefano.
All right. Thanks for watching Electorama Weekly.